Hello there, and welcome to week 14 of the philosophy course. How time flies, goes so fast. The year is almost over. What does it even mean to say something like time flies and time is so fast? Fast compared to what? I wonder. Anyway, over the last couple of weeks, you've been looking at the philosophy of religion and looking at various arguments, such as the ontological argument and um, the cosmological argument. Big names, mind you, with all these types of arguments. There's the argument from design, so all these various arguments presented, and in the coming couple of weeks, we'll be working on the last and final major assessment task for Philosophy Unit 2, and that will kind of conclude the course, and there's a bit of an evaluation at the end of it, but mostly it'll conclude the course. So I guess at this point in time, you should start to be looking at drawing your ideas together about philosophy of religion, having a look at the questions in week 14, thinking of which question you're going to choose, and starting to research and think about that particular question. You've probably been pretty familiar with the various arguments, so I won't go into that too much. Perhaps there's just one thing that kind of has stuck out in my mind as I'm reading through the blogs, and reading through your various ideas and evaluations of these arguments. I think a lot of evaluations that generally students have made have been pretty good and pretty on ball, and I think you've plucked away at the various fallacies or errors in reasoning, or possible errors in reasoning with the arguments for the existence of God. But there was just one thing that kind of triggered my mind in thinking, and that's this notion of the distinction between reason and faith. And I think this is quite interesting because essentially we're looking at reason with all these various arguments for the existence of God. But a religious person, they might say, okay, I can understand the reasoning behind this, but my belief in the existence of a God, it's based on faith, which is not the same as reason. So your arguments that you make for the non-existence of God don't really apply because of this idea of faith. And it's an interesting notion. What's the distinction between the two various concepts? It's always good to think about these ideas in terms of concepts. So the concept of faith and the concept of reason. What are the grounds for these various concepts? Do we have different grounds for faith than we do for reason? Obviously, we want to have good grounds for reason. Perhaps something that's based in knowledge. Perhaps faith has different grounds for its own purposes. And in thinking about this, I'm also drawn to, there was a kind of 18th century Dutch philosopher called Kierkegaard, and he was a theologian and a philosopher of the time. He's quite an interesting character. Look him up if you get the time and space. He's often regarded as, I suppose, one of the first of maybe the existential kind of movement. But he was very much a Christian, a person of his time. But he was very much concerned with this idea of faith. He's asking himself, what is faith? And he looked around in Copenhagen. He looked around and thought, people just have it too easy with this faith. And he wrote a book called Fear and Trembling. And he thought that faith is not something that would make you comfortable. It's something that would impose, as the title suggests, a certain notion of fear and trembling, a kind of what might be called an existential crisis to have this faith. And he draws upon a particular aspect of the Bible, and it's in the book of Job, and it's about a story about a person called Abraham and his little son, maybe he's probably 1 or so years old, called Isaac. And Abraham, apparently, as the story goes, is told by God to go up to the mountain and to kill his son. And Abraham hears this voice, and the voice tells him that it's God speaking. And he goes up to the mountain, and just as he's about to beat the hell out of his son and kill him, his 1-year-old son, which, this is abhorrent kind of behavior. Just before he does so, he hears another voice, and it says, your faith has been tested, Abraham. No need to kill your son anymore. It's okay. God's pleased with you. So Kierkegaard is very much interested in this story, and he uses it as a basis for his thinking about faith. And he tries to use it and say, well, actually Abraham is the person here that constitutes faith, because it's unreasonable. It's unreasonable to kill your son, but yet Abraham goes on and obeys this kind of command. So he's very much interested, Kierkegaard at the time was very much interested in this story to demonstrate what faith might be. And it's almost like a leap into the unknown for Kierkegaard, a leap from the temporal body that we all kind of have into this kind of eternal kind of unknown. And I guess that's why he's kind of being looked upon as kind of like a forefather of existentialism. But nevertheless, it's kind of interesting to look at everyday concepts such as faith and see how people have come to it, and evaluating how they've kind of came at and what angle they've came at. So I think I've kind of waffled on a little bit, as I usually do with these types of things, but I just thought the idea of faith and reason and what was the distinction between the two was quite an interesting area of philosophy to go down, because it brings back all that stuff from Unit 1 about epistemology and what's knowledge, and how can we justify knowledge. And it seems as though Kierkegaard's kind of saying, well, faith is quite a different thing. Anyway, that just about rounds it up. I hope you're all kind of have chosen a question or are about to choose a question from week 14. Please email or call if you need to talk through any aspect of your question. If you're not sure, should I cover this philosopher? Is this related? Just shoot me a quick email or a call. And I'll try and reply to that as quickly as possible. Also, before I go, I just wanted to mention that there is the philosophy excursion planned for Monday the 29th of October, which is in the last week 16. If you can go, excellent. Please send off your excursion permission form to DECV. I really need those in ASAP if you intend to go. Basically, we'll be looking at ideas from the philosophy of religion, but also other things about philosophy of art. And also there's a recent exhibition that's been put on at NGV about death. So I thought that might be interesting to look at and to talk about and to see how it fits with the stuff we've been looking at throughout the whole year. So that concludes everything for the moment. Bye for now, and speak to you sometime soon.